Welcome to the Big Screen Symposium podcast. This session is from the Big Screen Symposium held in Auckland on the 9th and 10th of July 2022. Some film clips played at the live event have been edited out of the podcast. In this session, series creator Simone Nathan and director Aidee Walker discuss the process of making the binge-worthy Jewish comedy series Kid Sister, from conception through to post-production. They speak with journalist Alex Casey about the writing process, the wearing of multiple creative hats, the challenges of overcoming budget limitations, and the joys of working with other female creatives.
So kia ora koutou, welcome to this investigative journalism session. My name is Alex Casey and I am a journalist from the Spin-Off. I feel like I'm invading this event a little bit from outside the industry. But I'm here today to interrogate Kid Sister. The who, the why, the what, the when, most importantly, the how. I have been told from an inside source that the series costs an unsexy amount of money. We have established that earlier. So I'm keen to know how you managed to pull it off. So join with me today is Simone Nathan, the writer, star, EP, woman of the moment, and Aidee Walker, the director. So join me in welcoming them. Great to have you guys here.
Oh, stoked to be here.
Thank you. Yeah, and thanks, Alex, for doing this. We appreciate it.
Oh,
yeah.
My pleasure. So I suppose to begin, Kid Sister is a series that's been gestating for quite a while, Simone. Do you want to take us back to the moment of conception for you?
I see what you're doing here with all the sort of birth references and puns, because it's a show about pregnancy, among other things.
Spoiler.
Oh, yeah. Sure. I think, I've been having huge memory problems since COVID. I literally don't remember a single moment of my life. So this is really hard. I'm like, okay. I think I was living in New York at the time. It was around 2016 when I wrote this, and it was Thanksgiving time. Everybody goes away during Thanksgiving to see their families. And I'd gone to so many, and you always feel like this real invader during family time. And I finally was like, I hate this. These people eat sweet potato with marshmallow. I can't be dealing with this. That's one of their traditional foods. And I was like, I'm just gonna stay home this year and chill out with my cat. And suddenly I realized that I had 3 or 4 days to myself, and I was like, I should write something. And it was at a moment in my career when I had graduated my postgrad degree in the States, and I was working teaching creative writing to kids. I was trying to break into the industry still, and I'd written all these American samples. I'd been trying to, write something that would sell overseas, and I thought that was what people wanted. And I think they just didn't totally ring true. It wasn't quite hitting. And I thought, all right, time to write something real and something about me. And I still said it in the States because I wasn't quite willing to go there, but I wrote a Jewish half-hour family comedy, a pilot, that's pretty similar, I would say, to what ended up being the episode 1 of Kid Sister.
Wow.
Then I came home when I won the green card lottery, and I met with Harriet Crampton from Greenstone. She read the sample and was like, well, why would you not just set this in New Zealand? It's almost you, but it's not quite you. Just take it that one extra step, come on. And I was like, okay. And I did. And she was like, okay, that's better. Now let's apply it for funding. And that was it. We just developed it into some pitch docs and added Aidee to the mix. And that was it. We
got rejected.
We got rejected, of course. And then I was like, okay, well, that's over. And they were like, no, we just try again. I was like, oh, okay. And then we applied again, and then we got it.
Right.
Yeah.
So how many years was this in the making?
I guess since 2016. But that's one of the main things I'm learning is how long things take. And that's why, if you write something that you really don't care about, but you just want to sell it, it's kind of nightmarish because you then end up working on it for 6 years. And then by the time it sells, you're like, I hate this thing. So it's kind of important to have something that you can continue to care about for a decade or more. Yeah.
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 And so at what point did you come on, Aidee? Before the first rejection?
Yeah.
So you're entrenched.
So Harriet called me and said, you have to direct this thing. It's this amazing young talent. Read the script. And then literally I said, it's really great. She said, okay, sign this contract. You have to direct it. No, she said, she goes, I can pay you this much, sign now. And I was like, okay. No, but it wasn't like that because I really loved it. So I read it and I was like, this is cool. I was a bit like, oh, okay. And then I read it and I was like, this is amazing. And I think that was 2019. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
It was ages ago.
Yeah.
And then we got together with Emily, at that point with story producing, and did a bit of a story table. Then you went off and wrote more. And then we were just like, oh my God, this is so amazing. It's totally going to get funding. And when we got rejected, we were both like, like really gutted, even though this is the nature of the world. And then, and then went in again and then got it. But yeah, so 2019 maybe?
I remember when we met at some cafe, we had never met in real life, and
But
you'd already been...
we'd Zoomed for about a year.
And I walked into the cafe and I didn't know Aidee, so I didn't know really like who to look for properly yet. And you had seated yourself in a corner facing the wall, and I was like, this person's a psychopath. I was like, what's wrong with you? I had to like go around to everyone being like, are you my friend? Anyway.
And I was on the phone. I was on the phone for another 10 minutes.
Yeah, being like...
No, because it was something about like something really, like a plumbing thing, guys. It was something like really urgent. I wasn't being a total asshole.
It's a power move.
But we had been on Zoom for a year, eh? Like Zoom talks and, oh my God, that's so crazy.
Yeah.
So you had one episode written at that point.
Yes.
And then you started working on the whole thing.
Well, I think we, Emily and I worked together to write, I think, about 3 episodes so that by the time the show was greenlit, we could kind of just dive in a little bit more and get it produced more quickly. So we had 3 that we were pretty happy with, and then we had to write the other 2 after we got the go-ahead. Yeah.
Why the 5 episode?
Oh my gosh.
Curveball question.
I don't know.
Money?
Funding. It's the amount of money. Because you got to work out like how, well, you've only got this time to shoot it. And I mean, I think we all talked about a 6th, but I was just like, no, you've only got, at the time we only had 15 days to shoot the whole thing.
Yeah.
Wow.
And they're 22-minute episodes, but you don't shoot 22 minutes, you shoot like...
It actually works also because we talk about this a lot, like the structure of season 1 is sort of filmic. And so in a way, when you look at that running time, it ends up being about the length of a film. And so you can, a lot of people, it's like the greatest compliment that I can receive. People will say like, I just sat down and watched it all in one go because it's about, you know, the length of like a bladder. So you can kind of just like binge it. And yeah, that rules. That's like the best thing ever to hear. And I think we did even consider like, what if we were to cut it as a film afterwards and then try and take it to festivals and stuff. But so far we haven't done that. Yeah,
because Rurangi did that and I was just like obsessed with that idea,
smart.
but there was no money to
Yeah.
There's still time.
Yeah.
Does anyone in this room have any money? I wanted to ask about, obviously, striving for cultural authenticity, very important with a show like this about the Jewish community and only one Jewish creative on the show. How did you kind of work to make sure that was authentic throughout?
I guess I'm like Aidee. The first thing is that you build it into the script. So it's really like most of the groundwork is done there. You decide, you know, we said we sort of wanted to structure each episode around maybe like a festival or some kind of Jewish practice that hasn't really been depicted on screen that much. And then we had Tamar Munch. Put your hands up, Tamar, yeah. She is our cultural liaison as well as the head of publicity. So that took a lot of the pressure and the like labor out of my hands because once the show was written and funded and, you know, that teams were going around finding shooting locations, we really wanted to shoot at the Auckland Hebrew congregation. That was like so important to me, especially because it's beautiful and we're not going to be there much longer at that site. The Jewish community is moving. And so I really wanted to, you know, capture that place on screen while we could, but it's really hard because then suddenly you're at the whim of this community and you're saying, please, can we shoot here? And they get to decide, well, do we like it? And can we read drafts? And can we look at what you're saying about us before we let you? And we're like, no, we don't want you to see what's in here. But we did share it with them and they were surprisingly really like positive and supportive. And that's all thanks to, I think, Tamara and Emily's work, going and meeting with them and talking through the show and our vision for it and what we were trying to say through it. So I don't know if that's so much about cultural authenticity, but I think it adds another layer of it, that it takes place in these real places. And it was helpful for me as a performer as well, because I knew that I was in the actual locations where I went to primary school and I went to synagogue and continued to, spend a lot of time there and at the deli. So that was really cool.
I think, we were looking for locations that second lockdown, the August one. So everything got shifted and I had a job on Mystic, but that got moved. So suddenly I had some time. And so Emily and I started looking for the house, because how the house is quite everything in that show.
Yeah.
We started looking really early. And so we were trying to do lots of location stuff quite early, but the synagogue and using the Auckland Hebrew congregation was completely only locked off I don't even want to say a week before we shot, because that sounds insane, but I think it might be accurate. So I'm kind of going, Emily, we got we're shooting in the She's like, we just have to be patient, we're just waiting. And Tamara and Emily just did so much mahi, really respectful mahi. And it just sounds really similar to working with iwi. You just can't go in there. It's just not, it's not about you at the end of the day. Even though I was like, have we got a backup? What are we doing? But they did a lot of work and were really strategic and shared the things that were important to share, the scenes that were with the rabbi and made sure we weren't, and actually to Steve Barr's credit as well, at the TVNZ, right earlier we flagged, let's make sure that the rabbi, even though the character, the rabbi played by Ari Boyland, has everyone seen Kid Sister, by the way?
Yeah, okay. Nice.
Even though he's a very funny character and he's layered and he's not, none of the characters are very earnest, we still made sure that they were across all that. And there was I just didn't have time for any of that. So I'd constantly see Tamar and Emily sitting down. Constantly we're going on recce's and they're just having heaps and heaps of meetings and doing all that groundwork and really took the time and had the patience and respect. And I think that's why we got it. And I think that the end result of that was everyone felt really included in the show and thankfully liked the show from the Jewish community.
Yeah. The response has been really positive from the JCOM. And also I think there was another element where the team was really interested in asking me questions, and I really had an approach that was please don't feel awkward about asking the wrong thing or pronouncing things wrong or not getting it right the first try. I was like, it's so chill. You're not expected to be on top of this stuff, so there are no dumb questions. So people would come to me and say, is this the right shovel for this scene, or are these the right rocks? And the heads of departments, I was like, please come to me and ask. And if I don't know, I'll direct you to Tamar or somebody in the community. There was one time where, what's Shane? He's our head of
production designer.
Yeah. Imagine not knowing that, but it's I really don't. He did this amazing job building the sukkah that I think we have a clip to play from. It's that hut that collapses, and he worked over his summer to build this kind of prop that could collapse and then be rebuilt and collapse and be rebuilt. But at one point somebody came to me and they were like, and just checking, does this look legit? And everything about it was absolutely perfect. He used the right wood, he used the right topping, but there was a huge Star of David on the wall of the sukkah. And I was like, yes, no. I was like, not that. I was like, just so you know, when you are Jewish, you don't have to really remind yourself that you're Jewish and have the symbols on the wall. I was like, I think that would be, it's sort of different to Christianity where there's big crosses everywhere to be
You pointed to me for Christianity. It's super weird.
No.
And I'm like,
no, she's Buddhist, but yeah, and I was like, no, not that, but everything else. Nailed it.
And actually, with Shane Radford, so Shane Radford, guys, if you don't know, is he just did FINA. I just saw FINA. So he did FINA, and he's he was our oldest member of our crew, and he was really great because we had a lot of wonderful, majority female, and every HOD was pretty much female. Except for Shane, but it was really great having Shane because he built the graveyard. You saw the cemetery. He built that cemetery because we weren't shooting in a cemetery. So we found a plot that was, we went around that, oh my God, can you remember that day? We went to that cemetery. We just looked at everything. We looked at the actual Jewish cemetery and we were just like, we can't shoot here. This just feels so weird.
Yeah.
So we found an area that didn't have anyone buried. And then weirdly had the Jewish cemetery right next door, so it actually plays in the background, but then he built that. And so having that, I didn't even think about a cemetery, to be honest. I was like, oh, this is sweet. We'll just find some cool houses. We'll just shoot in the locations. It's going to be so cheap. Yeah, so Shane was great, but also just because of his years of experience and works on heaps of Māori projects, he does the research, he did the mahi.
He goes in.
Honestly, thank God for him.
His wife and himself, they learned to make latkes, challah, the authenticity that went into those details, and then like the costume department learned to make like kippot, the little Jewish hats, and it was just, it was fantastic. Anyway, that's our answer.
There were some challenges because you had to shoot at night quite a lot, I understand. Do you want to talk us through some of that?
I don't really know what to say except that I haven't really, this is my first project that's been produced that was written solely by me, and I didn't know that you're not supposed to write too many scenes that take place in cars and at night. And I got so much pushback, and I was like, guys, stop. Like, you're killing my vision. And then we got there on the day, and I was like, fuck. I was like, I really, really hate that I wrote this many night scenes because now we're up till 4 a.m. every night for a week or two. And it's my fault. And you really learn that you have to, when you act in your own project, you really have to sleep in the bed that you made. So if we get another season, I will not be writing any scenes at night.
I'm opposite. I love shooting at night because it looks cool, and I don't really care how hard it is to shoot. So I was pissed off every time we lost a night scene, but production don't like night scenes because it's just hard for everybody. I mean, I care for the crew, guys. I love the crew. But I just care about, at the end of the day, there was like we had to rejig we had to make it a lunch. Shabbos lunch and not a Shabbos dinner, and it just got really complicated. But I love shooting at night, and I love shooting in cars. But when you have a budget of under $1 million for a 5 times 22-minute show, you can't shoot in cars. So, and I hate it when you see a car pull in, you see a car pull out. Even actually a car pulling in and a car pulling out is quite time-consuming. But I hate it if everyone's just sitting in cars. So we had to be really creative about that and go, well, how can we make the car stuff interesting and feel realistic? And yeah.
Should we play a clip?
Let's play a clip.
Which one should we play?
Yeah, so everyone is kind of like
one.
a vibe and a tone of the show, so and then we can talk about it after.
Cool.
Oh.
Aww.
Incredible. Thank you for normalizing UTIs. I really appreciate it.
That was a huge guiding star for us.
Yeah.
But it is a myth, of course, cranberry juice, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
As later mentioned in the show.
I remember someone posting on some social media platform saying, this isn't just a Jewish show, this is representing people with UTIs. Like,
we're out there.
It's my platform. Yeah, that's my platform.
So this is probably a good time to talk about the casting of the show.
sure.
Eagle-eyed viewers will notice Simone is the lead and the writer. But also your real-life partner, Paul Williams, plays Ollie, and your real-life brother plays your brother.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
Well, he is my little brother, but was playing my big brother. So that was a really interesting dynamic. I mean, it would be like a scene where he was schooling me, and then the scene would end and I'd be like, you messed that up. And, go straight back into that dynamic of the older sister. So I feel like that would have been a lot for you to have to handle those real life dynamics going on behind the scenes. But in terms of how it happened, I mean, I don't know. I didn't really intend to play the role when I wrote it, but I knew it was a possibility as we were approaching production. I grew up doing theatre and after-school drama and plays at uni and stuff like that, but I'm not at all a serious actor. I've been very driven on the path to writing. Like, I always knew that was what I wanted to do. So this was an exception for me where I felt like, for the sake of the authenticity of casting and that it would give my brother a chance to have a role as well. You're always trying to make sure your family's employed. My cousins ended up playing my cousins. My dad plays my uncle. A lot of people from the community were in there. That guy, Mikey Gold, who was in that clip, he's just like a dude I grew up with and went to summer camp with. He's not an actor either. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, you can probably speak better to that casting process than I can. Yeah.
We made Simone audition like 3 times. It was pretty full on because I think up until then, Simone and I probably talked every day, and then suddenly there was like radio silence because we were like casting her. And so it was a bit tricky. So we wanted to cast Jewish, obviously. Didn't actually know how many Jewish actors were in New Zealand, and even talked about like getting someone from overseas at a certain point.
Yeah.
But then we were like, we don't have the money to do that. Like, that's insane. And then every time Simone would send me her favourite, like, Jewish, like a movie, like Shiva Baby, if you guys have seen that. If you haven't, go and watch it. That girl's not Jewish. And you keep sending me this stuff. And I'm like, but we can't cast non-Jewish, but all the, you know. And then we were reading, there was all these articles sent between us, like, is it okay to cast non-Jewish? And every article was sort of like both sides of it, kind of like, well, no. But we, Harriet EP, Emily Anderton, our producer, and I, behind your back, were like, no, we have to cast as many Jewish roles as we can because, and we couldn't cast everyone, we couldn't cast Kieran Jewish. I don't think there was even one Jewish option.
No, there was.
Oh, there's
but
one.
We felt that Amanda was the best for the role. We loved her audition, and I mean, other than casting myself and I think Paul and Joe, I was across the casting, and it was a really fun process. And Amanda had the best tape, and so did Peter as Hershey. They just knocked it out of the park, and it's just really important to have like experienced actors in the mix because myself and Paul are like relatively new to the screen, and suddenly like I'm supposed to be carrying the show, and I'm in almost every scene. If I didn't have people around that I could learn from as I was going, I mean, it was like a master's immersion program in acting for me, where it went from like nothing to, you know, my whole life for like 2-3 weeks. Yeah.
And I guess that was part of the process of like, one was, do you actually want to play yourself with your boyfriend playing yourself? Because we just have no idea and we want to make this for many seasons to come, and we're like, this is your life. So we had to have those very serious talks with both Simone and Paul separately, and Paul's just like, yeah, I think it'll be cool. You know, it was just like, and we're like, but are you sure? And then, of course, we did these auditions where they had to audition against actors. And so that was really interesting too, because the dynamic between Simone and an actor and Paul and an actor was very different to acting with your partner that you talk to every day. So it was a bit of a process actually, like even just audition technique. Like the first one was like, I can't see you. Like you guys were facing each other and I was like, you've got to, I can't see you, you know? Then the second one, and each time we're like, okay, no, this is cool. But one of the auditions was like 2.5 hours or something, I think the first one.
It was terrible. But I mean, it was important because afterwards, when I got the call from you guys being like, you're playing yourself, congrats, I did actually genuinely feel as though I needed that vote of confidence from the team, and that I had kind of earned that role and that it wasn't a given, because that meant that when I did have to take on this huge mantle of this job, I was like, well, at least it's not just me who thinks I can do it. Yeah. And as you said, Paul's approach, and this is really what I love about him, is that he's so incredibly chill that he's just like, I think that'll be good. I could probably do that. And behind the scenes, he was saying to me, oh, you can definitely do it. It's not that hard. He was like, you just get up there and act. And it's basically you. So like, you don't have to do all the soul searching that an actor does. And I'm incredibly tightly wound, and I'm a huge, I'm a highlighter girl, and I'm really like one of those people who has to be on top of every email and every, rewrite. And he's the opposite, and I find that balance really comforting. Yeah.
He's definitely the opposite.
Yep.
This is funny to email. But Paul became one of my most serious actors, actually. Like, he'd be prepping. Like, where's Paul? And he's literally just standing by, and he's found a quiet place on set, and he's very quiet, and he's waiting.
Aidee, that was because he was learning the lines. He had not looked at it and then was like, oh yeah, what is it? Okay, cool, yeah, let's go.
I actually thought it was because we were up in the apartment and it was just so hectic and there was no room, and he was literally just like, I need to get some space.
Probably that too.
Yeah. But yeah.
You ended up in a situation where you were at home with yourself, Paul, the actor who plays Bex, and your brother, after you had shot, and you were just basically recreating the show,
well,
right?
there was a day where we had to shut down for COVID because one of our crew accidentally brought it in, and so halfway through the day we all had to go home, and the actress who plays Beck, Kira, she didn't want to go back to her friend's place that she was staying because one of them was immunocompromised and she didn't want to expose them if we were sick. So she ended up coming back to our family home and staying the night at us in my parents' room. My parents were away, and it was just bizarre, all 4 of the kind of leads of the show just staying in the same house and not knowing when we'd be able to come back. And we thought she might be there for 10 days. And then the next day the law changed around shutting down for COVID. And then we just came straight back. Yeah, so it was kind of like a crisis averted moment. I think we only had to shut down for maybe 3 days.
Shut down for 5 days.
5 days? 5 days.
4 days. 4 days plus the Sunday, yeah.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of blurred lines, obviously. How was it going from being a writer to an actor? Did you have to be taking off different hats all the time? Were you kicking yourself for something you wrote, 2 years ago that was really hard to deliver? How did that work?
Well, so many crying scenes, and I really regretted that. But actually, that's a hectic process, learning to cry in front of other people. I cry every day as a person, so I really just had to make sure that time coincided with the shoot. But we tried the tear stick and the blowing of that, but in the end, going method was the best way. So I sort of had to psych myself up and then hold it and then let it all go, and then it was too much, and then we had to bring it down and try again. And so that was a really huge learning curve for me, but I kind of loved it because it makes you feel very powerful when you do it well and you feel like you nailed it. But I don't know, what else?
I was just thinking of the crying scene in the toilet in Ep 5. Every female crew was crying. It was hilarious. Someone would come off and we're all the scene with them in the mirror. But no, the crying's funny because I keep trying to say, I was like, some of my friends just can't cry. They're the best actors, don't worry. But you're like, no, I'm going to fucking do it. I'm going to fucking do it. So
it was exhausting.
Yeah, it was just, look, it's a lead role. She's in every scene. If you've never done that, I just keep talking about, stamina. It's not going to be necessarily that fun sometimes. And we just talked a lot about that. And we had Ella as an acting coach we brought on, which is pretty unusual for a $850,000 production.
Yeah.
But it was really good because it was just sort of I had so much else to think about. And, and we had a very tight schedule. One day I think we turned up and a lot of you may have worked on fast stuff, but I think there was just 11 scenes and you think, oh, that's great. They're just all in one room. But we're also trying to do some interesting shots, It's I've definitely done 14-minute Day on Brokenwood Mysteries, but that would be in the police station and it's one lighting stage and you just go for it. So,
and I've got to gas Aidee up on this one. Really, yes, I had an acting coach and that was really, really helpful in the rehearsals. But as a director, I felt so comforted and seen by her, and the fact that I knew your acting background and that you had been across the whole process. It was there wasn't any awkwardness for me or power struggle when we were on set. I completely surrendered to the fact that I was an actor. It was your vision now and I was there to execute it. And yet still, when there were moments when I was looking ooh, that's not how I imagined it, you were so open to being well, let's just talk through that. How do you see it? And when we'd work it out together and kind of reimagine it and take that time that is really valuable time from the day for you to ask me what I saw and even just unprompted check with me stuff about, are you happy with how this looks? And what did you mean with this line? And I think there is something hopefully helpful about having the writer right there on set all the time, because if anybody wanted to change a line, they'd just be like, can I say it like this? And I'd be like, yep, is that cool? And you'd be like, yep. And then that was it. That's all you needed to get that approved. So
it's efficient.
It's efficient, if nothing else.
Do we have a crying scene on file?
I don't know if we ended up doing that. But what do we have next?
We've got the suka, or we've got the end of Ep 4.
Should we play the suka? Because we talked about that a bit already.
Yeah, neat. I had two other thoughts I wanted to add while I was watching that. One is a more serious thing, which is that I think one of the, harder parts of being the writer and the actor in this particular circumstance, and I think this is something that I really play down in interviews, is how autobiographical this show is. I'm always no, but then I'm secretly yes, a lot of these conversations happened. A lot of this is true. And then, we obviously take fictional and dramatic versions of that and then added a pregnancy on top of that. Some of the harder moments of my life with my family and with Paul, then you end up reenacting them. And I think that's a really horrific thing to have to do. And it's that's something that you'd be okay, I kind of don't want to relive my breakup that I had with somebody in front of a camera crew. That is truly bizarre and unhealthy. But at the same time, I was that's good TV. And also, just got to get through it. And then you watch it and you're kind of oh. And then it's worth it because the other scenes are so special to have. And it's kind of weird to think that like if Paul and I have kids, then our kid will be able to watch this show. That's a really weird thought. I was like, that's going to be out there forever. And those are the things that you have to kind of consider as you approach this. Do I want that? On the other hand, there are some really positive and hilarious moments. And I mean, I remember one bizarre moment on set. My mum came along to watch one day of the shoot. It was the day where...
she came to record the flute.
Yeah, to record the flute, that's right. And Karen was doing the blessing on Lulu, where they're standing outside and she does the Shabbat, like Friday night blessing on your child. Afterwards, I said to my mum, how was it? What did you think of everything you saw? And she was like, I was just really jealous seeing somebody else do the blessing on you. She was like super threatened and jealous of like the bond with me and Amanda. I was like, it's acting, girl. But she didn't like it, yeah. And it was also cool because I think there is so much, often like family and work separation, and sometimes like bringing my dad in and bringing my brother in, it was like bring your family to work day every day. And it's good for your family to see how hard the hours are and what goes into a process like this. They were incredibly supportive the whole way through the writing process, and they read the scripts and approved them. That was like really important to me. And
us.
And you.
Simone, have you shown your parents the script? Yeah. Simone, have you shown your parents?
I was like, it's not ready.
Surprise.
Yeah, but they were just so cool about it. They were like, it's really funny. We laughed our asses off. They're very able to laugh at themselves. And they said they cried when they read it as well. And I was like, that's good. Cry.
Yeah. Tears.
Yeah.
Should we talk about post-production? Because I know that you ended up doing 80-hour weeks or something close to it. And you were only supposed to do 2 days a week or something.
We had pretty big weeks. Yeah, it's really fast. So basically you finish a shoot and you always think, oh, great, the edit. I don't know if you guys heard that talk yesterday with Peter Jackson's editor. And it was just like, yeah, it's so true. Like, I just love lying on a couch. Like, I literally get into an edit suite and just lie down. And the editor just thinks it. And then the editor never looks at you, the whole edit. They're just editing and you're just talking. But anyway, you think it's so relaxing, but it was the most insane because two things. So Emily Anderton came on as our producer. Harriet was going to produce, and then Harriet's obviously made Greenstone so successful with lots of projects, so she couldn't do it. So Emily and I had worked together on Mystic. She wasn't the producer, but she was my producer in my mind. She was very supportive to me, and I was like, she can do this. So Emily came on. So Emily comes from a film background, and she basically was like, well, you're the director, you should have a say over the show, which is not a normal structure for TV. If you guys don't know, you do a director's cut, you hand it in and you say sayonara. So this is very different because obviously it's much lower paid than a normal gig as well. Quite a lot. And so it was a passion project. I did it because the scripts were so good and because of the team. And then, so anyway, and Harriet was obviously supportive of this as well. So basically, I got to do everything. So I got to do the grade and the sound mix and everything, So that meant that, there wasn't money for that. And there actually is never money for that, even in a proper budgeted show. But obviously, Emily and I were just like, doesn't matter, we're going to see this through. So there was many hours put in. But basically, you only get 3 days. Was it 3 days an episode? Roughly. More or less. So you kind of get 3 days an episode. So you think, oh God, this is so cool, shoot's over. But it's crazy. It's like you just edit until you have to go. And I had a really great editor who does Wellington Paranormal and came up from Wellington and did the hours with me. Like there was not any issues in us leaving at midnight or whatever, or coming in on a Sunday, Yeah. So basically, post-production was pretty crazy. And then of course, also with all the compromises you make, you're sometimes stitching things together and trying to make it work. So yeah, it's cool now looking back on it and thinking about that time. But I guess the thing to be talk about would be episode ones are always really tricky. And most people watching them don't realise how hard episode ones are. And it was really cool getting a couple of directors call me and go, hey, episode 1 was really strong. And actually it was like crawling on the floor trying to get it into the shape it was in. And then it got progressively a little bit easier as we went along, I think. Yeah, once you felt, because it's a new show too, like, what's the show? And tonally, like Simone's first scene is so, that's kind of why I did it, was literally that first scene. It's so funny to me and so kind of dark and creepy and horny and naughty and all those things. But that was a hard motherfucking scene to cut. I made it like a film. It was so lengthy and did a little
drone.
You did VOs for me. I put VOs down. We're like, oh, what's the VO? And I guess we spent a day in ADR trying to get episode 1, trying to work it out. Like, what is it, you know?
Yeah, actually, speaking of ADR and voiceover and stuff, one thing that I know you're going to ask about this anyway, VO. Yeah, it's like, no, I'm just doing it.
There's nothing on this.
I'm really glad that we didn't go with the voiceover option from Fleabag, which I think it's like a really appealing option because it's so personal, where they just turn straight to camera. But I think it would have been a nightmare because it was really great that we could actually reapproach the VO after the show was edited and cut together and say, how does this actually work best? And I think if we had shot it direct to cam, we couldn't have changed all of that as easily because you're locked with the image. So it was helpful that we could completely reassess it, even in the room when we were doing it. This doesn't actually sound right coming out of my mouth. Let's change it. One really good example of that is in episode 4. In the scene where Ollie finally finds out that Lulu has been hiding this huge secret of this pregnancy from him, and he comes back to the Emmanuel home with Siggy and Leo. We had this big VO section where Lulu is watching him react and waiting to hear what he has to say, and she's got this huge inner monologue about Ollie and the way he processes information. In the end, we went with a different option that I had to be talked into a little bit. And then when I let that die and saw how it was cut, I was really, really blown away by it. And I think we have a clip if we want to watch.
That episode 4?
Yeah.
Episode 4.
Well, apparently they're both dead in a ditch because nobody is answering their bloody phones.
And that's a car scene at night.
Yeah.
Nailed it.
So we fought our battles. We're like, that one has to exist. Don't lose that one.
So what's interesting there is the restraint, right? There's no VO. There's so much silence. And that was quite a journey to get that final cut.
Yeah, because I mean, she's a character who makes questionable decisions, and so you really rely on that VO in some ways to align the audience with what she's doing and why. But at the same time, I don't know.
We presented options. So
Yeah.
basically there was a bit of debate with editor, 2 producers, and basically we showed different options. So we showed it with VO, then you wrote a new VO. But the other issue with taking it out was that in Ep 5, the VO gives up on her, so we didn't want to lose that. So it gets complicated because you've got to go, hang on, how does that affect going forward? But actually it was just stronger, and I think weirdly just worked, you know? Because even I'm always a bit reluctant. I think it's always Harriet and Emily that suggest something. I take a day to process.
It's huge.
And I think, did I even message you and go, just don't respond to notes straight away? You're going to like, this is a really good rule, guys. So don't respond straight away, because sometimes I write a response and it's like, I can't fucking believe you fucking suggest that. Motherfuckers, this is fucking. And then I'll go, delete. That worked. Or delete. Yes, but...
it always makes it better. I mean, and even if it means that the notes mean that you reapproach it in a new way, that's not the way that was suggested. It's like, you just take a second to be really angry, and then you're like, okay, wait, they care about this show, and that's why they're suggesting this. And I think that's what I love about our producerial team, is that they take the show so seriously, as I've said before, as if it's like Game of Thrones or something. And they approach it like it is like this really big budget show. So you know that any note that you're getting is because they want to elevate it and use these very scarce resources that we have to make like a world-class show that hopefully we can sell overseas. So
and also you and I are attached in a different way. So Simone, you're attached as an actor, knowing what you did on the day.
Yeah.
Then the writer's always attached, to the script. Like that's just overall, they're like, but that's not what I wrote. And then I'm attached to going, that took us 5 hours to shoot that shot, or I fought for that shot. And then the producer comes in and is like, get rid of that, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
So that's the different, I think that, and I've really learned over the years to let go of that and go, cut. But I think it is really good sometimes for us to process it. And sometimes we fought back, like often we wouldn't agree or I'd agree, it was a mix. So, but I think in the end, it's good to get everyone's blessing on big changes like that.
Yeah, and honestly, it's just a process of learning to let go. Because I mean, even like with my episode of Our Flag Means Death, truly when I watched it, I had no idea what to expect, and I didn't recognize almost like a single word of that script. That it was like, it had my name on it, and I was like, who wrote this? And the thing is that's it. That's how it works. It gets rewritten, and then you're lucky that you still get your name on it. And then I watch other episodes of the show, and I'm like, oh, yes, I wrote that whole sequence, and I remember I pitched that joke and that dialogue, and so you take the wins where you can get them.
Yeah.
I think this is an unusual thing because I had full writing control over it, and they remained very loyal to the scripts, and that was something that meant so much. Is like, really, I think it changed very like minimally, the dialogue, and I felt
Probably more cuts. And if you don't notice a cut, like there's cuts, but I'm always like watching Simone.
oh yeah, when they showed me in the edit, and I just completely had no idea that something was missing. It's
But if
like,
you did notice, you'd bring it up. And
Yeah.
it's like, so if you notice, but often if no one noticed massive cuts, I'm like, it's working because they're not remembering that line,
100%,
you know?
yeah.
But I do watch like this. I'm like watching everyone's faces. Nope, that passed. that continuity error passed. You know, so
Have we seen any today? No.
there is a really bad one that I will never talk about. But Alex and I had a little pat, and my editor. We're like, we will never talk about this ever again.
It's hiding in plain sight.
I don't want to know what that was either.
I wanted to ask about the kind of production team, and it was a very woman-led show, and it deals with a lot of, obviously, you know, themes affecting women. How did it compare to other productions you've worked on, having all kind of key roles filled by women?
I mean, okay, I can answer first. In my previous experience in the States, in the writers' rooms that I worked in, prior to Our Flag Means Death, it was an almost exclusively white male over 50 or 60 room. There are exceptions, and I learned a lot from those men. They're amazing, like playwrights and novelists on Bloodline who really have a completely different approach to writing than a ragtag group of young kids like on Our Flag Means Death. But I was getting coffees for people for years and doing juice runs and listening with my ear to the door on different shows, trying to understand what was going on in there. And I don't find it that different. It's just nice to be among people who look like you and have the same sensibilities as you. But I've learned a lot from all my experiences. Yeah, I don't know.
I think the writing world can be different because there are lots of female writers and there's also lots of female producers. So those are the two areas where we don't lack. But I mean, it's completely different. So I went from Our Kid Sister shoot to One of Us Is Lying. I had an acting role on. And I've been doing this for 20 years, acting. And I walked onto set and I swear to God, it felt like 56'2" men in black hoodies walked in. And I'm used to it, right? Like I can direct a set, but I was like, holy fucking shit. This is crazy. Imagine being a new actor. You would be absolutely daunted because then you're just blocking the scene. And also, I just want to say, you get no direction often in lots of shows. The director said one thing to me, he walked past, he said, 10% less drunk, and walked off. And so my son was getting a lot of direction, but I wasn't getting a lot, which is fine. I mean, that obviously means you're not totally shit, but it's still just like, give me something, I don't know what I'm doing. But I guess I just remember that energy, and it's not bad. I know half these guys. These guys are awesome. But I was like, holy cow, compared to our set, we had 2 camera assisting Tammy as men. We had a grip called Aidee. Do you know Aidee? It's like Fight Club. We don't both exist at the same time. And then we had a couple of other guys, but it was just like, honestly, like the most gorgeous set of men and women, and with a female DOP, I feel like that really sets a different vibe. We have a 5'5" female DOP on set, with a gentle manner when we're running out of time. Okay, this is what we're going to do, So it's completely different, and I think it's changing.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, it's changing.
Yeah, I would say it was very comforting in my first acting role to know that there was a fellow woman behind the camera so when I would look into the eye of the camera, I felt like I was looking straight at Tammy and not at a faceless, scary sea of audiences that I don't know. I just thought about Tammy and performing for her and performing for you and for Emily and Harriet to watch in the rushes. And that was all I really thought about. Just keep it really insular and don't think about all those larger viewers. Yeah.
Particularly when you're sort of peeing.
Yeah,
screen.
so many peeing
So
scenes.
much peeing in this.
Yeah, that's probably another thing I'll move away from slowly over time.
I think we've got just 10 minutes left, so I think we can do some audience questions.
Oh yeah,
Can we just
cool.
talk about the peeing? She did a great peeing position. I was so proud of you.
This one?
Yeah, it was excellent.
Yeah, there's so much peeing in there. I was doing a lot. Do we want to take?
Do we have questions? Ooh, okay.
Oh, this is how it works.
This is exciting. Okay.
I'm scared.
Are these a non? Okay. Question for Aidee. Given the chance and maybe budget, would you bring another director in for following seasons? Or does 5 eps feel like the right amount for one director?
522s is good, I reckon, for a director. It'd be very hard to split it up because you'd end up working like a half day. It wouldn't work. You have to do it in blocks. But if we did like 8 eps, you could break it into 2 4s. So it becomes a math equation. But I think, I think if you're getting into 1 hour episodes, I think blocks are good. And I think some directors love to come in and direct a whole season, but I think it's not good for the crew. And I think it's good to rotate. And I know there's so many, but guys, I'm just not a producer and I really don't ever want to be a producer, which is a really good thing for everybody. But I just think, we have to they make decisions because of budget. Every decision is made because of budget. But also, I just think...
Don't stress.
I'm stressed out about it because I think, there was a show made here. It was 8 1-hour episodes and this guy came over from Canada and wanted to direct the whole thing and it just made it hard for everybody else, Like, the script supervisor had to prep 8 1-hour episodes. I mean, how insane is that? So that no one had enough prep. You don't have any time to do your recce's and prep for the next team. And I think rotating teams is great. But in this case, 522s is like a movie, so it just needs one director.
All right. Back in the bad old days, when you got that rejection for pre-production, did you take notes and make changes to your first episode, or did you just resubmit the same work and hope that for new eyes on it the next time around?
Steve, did you submit this question?
Like weirdly
He's like, did you change
specific.
it? I don't know. Wait, so the question is, did you? Oh yeah, no,
Did you
that's a good
resubmit
question.
the same work and hope for new eyes on it?
No, that's a really good question.
Pax's show got the funding, right? So we didn't take it personally. We were like, oh, that's great. Pax.
No, and I ended up working on the show. I think we did. And one of the things that we did was we reapproached our pitch document and we reformatted it because it was cute, but it was like maybe a little... it was a bit tacky. It was like we needed to hire somebody to like reformat the images, go back to the drawing board and start thinking about your beautiful color palette that you built into the show, because that was kind of at that point starting to become a thing that we were looking at neon pinks and baby pinks and yellows
salmon.
And greens
dark
and
salmon,
salmons.
And
that SpongeBob, I used to work at Nickelodeon. SpongeBob was sold on the background images. The show, they didn't have a story, they didn't even have a sponge. It was those images of those kind of Hawaiian backgrounds.
Oh, wow.
That's what they brought in, and they were like, we love this. And I think they had some of the music, that weird music. It's like you start to show that you can see the show, and then they can see that with you. And I think it makes a really big difference to have a lovely looking pitch doc and a really nice treatment that says, we really believe that this show is already happening, I don't know what else changed. Maybe we had more polished episodes, but it really didn't change that much.
I don't think there was a lot.
It was really just about the fact that it was the right time for the show. It was a new funding round and something had shifted in the landscape where they were like, now we're ready for the show.
I think TVNZ were always behind it. There was no issue there.
Oh,
so
no.
I think it was just the timing.
Yeah.
Which other Jewish shows influenced your writing?
I would say I grew up loving The Nanny, and I think that's a really humorous portrayal of a Jewish woman. I also think sometimes it influences you in the way where you say, this is not what I want to do. And I think there are some stereotypes that are built into portrayals of Jewish women in our media that I would say, okay, maybe I don't want it to be a shrill Jewish woman, but at the same time, then I ended up actually writing a mum that's quite shrill because at the end of the day, like, you can try and move away from stereotypes, but you also have to draw on your reality, and the reality is my mum screams a lot. Like, the main sound I remember growing up with is hearing my mum go, Simone! up the stairs. And so, I mean, you know, it kind of is what it is in that sense. But I really love the show Transparent. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, that's just a really interesting portrayal of a Jewish family. And it also tackles the complexity around like different people's levels of practice, and it captures the fact that there can be female rabbis and that they have lives of their own. And so, yeah, that was a huge influence on me. Also, this isn't a Jewish show, but it has religion built into it. Season 2 of Fleabag is really inspirational to me, and the way that they...
Hot priest.
Yeah, and just like a really brave and bold and fearless approach to religion, which I think is a really scary thing. I mean, for me, I think the stakes were really high for me in portraying a Jewish family and the Jewish religion, because I'm so close with my community, and I am, you know, in real life much more religious than Lulu and much more involved in my community. And so my fear was that these were the stakes. If people don't like the show and the community, and there's a consensus that this was a bad portrayal of Judaism, I wouldn't be able to continue going to synagogue and feeling comfortable, and my family's mana in the community would also be destroyed. And I'm like, okay, that's chill. Like, that's really cool. And the first time that I went to shul since the show came out, and there was positive reactions and people being really excited about it and getting those messages, it was like, I don't care what anybody else thinks about the show, to be honest. That's really like when I thought that's a success for me.
Sounds like the scariest reviewer ever.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
This could be one for Aidee. You did so much with so little, including a lot of location shoots, which, as mentioned, really did add a lot to the show. Must have been tricky. What was the location budget? This is one for Emily.
Guys, directors don't know anything. It's like, Emily. We didn't have much, but I also know we got that house because we looked a lot, guys. We looked at so many houses and we got our heart broken many times. Like, we were looking the year before. But actually, and we went through 3 different location scouts too, because, right? And then this one came up, and it didn't even look the best in the photos, and it was like, so we work very collaboratively, and with our DOP, you know, if she doesn't like anything, I'm not going to use it ever, and production designer as well, because the production designer has a budget. So if we get to a place that's great structurally, but he has to bring everything in, there's no budget for that. So he can bring in bits of art. That house, the owners were just obviously wealthy, because the house is like, you can look it up, what it would cost to buy. But they obviously didn't need money. And it was like a cool thing of like, they wanted to be involved in the arts. And love them. Super, super awesome, dope woman, like just always in sports shorts and a t-shirt, super nice. And so basically super cool. And we're like, can we do this? We covered that bench. We moved everything around. We got, it's the first visit, Shane, the production designer, looks around and basically found out who did the art and got permission to use bits of art that were already there. Oh. So having that experience is really good with Shane. And then Tammy, it's all about white walls. No white walls. And so because it had lots of wood, and I just think, so basically we just tried to be very smart about it all. Yeah. And our worst choice was Paul's flat, because it was very hard to shoot in.
It was so tight.
But it was cheap.
If I learned anything, it was never let someone film in your house. I was like, after seeing what happens to your house, I was like, if somebody asks you, do not do it. They just move everything in your lights.
Don't say that.
Let us film that.
We're super respectful.
We were. And then we called in some favors as well, like the clay center. My aunt runs that, and so she just let us film those clay scenes. They're just, because,
And that clay centre, Morgana O'Reilly in that clay room.
Brilliant, right? Just a genius.
What a scene.
Yeah.
We've probably got time for one more question. What's next for Kid Sister?
Oh, yeah, I can answer this in 20 seconds. We're basically working on applying it for funding for season 2. So I've written a episode 1 and a series outline with the help of all of our co-collaborators. And we've just worked as hard as we can to get it as polished as possible.
I read it last night, but I was slightly drunk.
Okay, well, we need to talk about it. Yeah, that's it. That's what we're working on. Hope we get another season. That would be the best thing ever. And that's
Steve
Guys in the room. All right, well, thank you so much for your time. We've got the overtime, so we better wrap up. Thank you, Aidee.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you, everybody.
The Big Screen Symposium 2022 is brought to you by Script to Screen. We are grateful to our event partners, the New Zealand Film Commission, New Zealand On Air, AUT, Images and Sound, and Te Māngai Pāho. Voiceover is by me, Anna Corbett, and music by Poddington Bear.